Hey guys, what's up? It's me, MC Matador here, and today I am back after 4 weeks of just crazy stuff with the top 5 best and worst coaster restraints. Now, before I get this started, I just want to apologize. I've taken a break from YouTube because of this whole rapidly evolving COVID situation. I had a bout of depression, and I've been focusing intensely on my schoolworks. It's just I've had to take on some other projects to make ends meet for the family. I got my old job back from high school, so I've been working there more often. And it's just I've had a lot more on my plate, and YouTube has definitely taken not just the back burner, but probably just the very back burner. It's one of the least important things of my life right now, and I suspect that uploads will be delayed for at least another 2 weeks because my semester gets out on May 8th, but the stay-at-home order for Illinois has been extended through the end of May, and possibly longer if our peak ends up being more gradual. It's a rapidly evolving situation, and I sincerely apologize for not bringing any content for a while, but just everything's been going completely differently. Everything's just been topsy-turvy with this whole evolving situation and the world around us being entirely different. And my emotions have been also very much distraughtened because of this as well. I it's just been an interesting time, and these have been trying times for not just me, but not just my family, but the whole world. And I hope you guys are all doing well. And with all that, thank you if you're still tuning into this. Thank you very much. It means a lot to me that even after basically an entire month of not uploading, people are still going to tune into this. So before anything, I say thank you for considering me and watching this video. Now we move right on to the feature presentation. So, coaster restraints. This is what keeps you safely into the ride. Whether it's the bare minimum, whether it's completely necessary, there's good ones, there's bad ones. Now, a bit of context as well. Restraints might vary differently depending on your size. For me, I am 6'2", I weigh about 220 pounds, and I'm pretty lanky. I got some pretty lanky legs and arms. So I am more on the larger end of these coaster restraints. And for smaller riders, yes, there's a very small percentage that's taller than me, and maybe a percentage of the population that's larger than me in terms of weight or girth, but for the most part, these restraints will be different for those who are shorter or smaller, especially children. So I have ridden some of these types of restraints while I was still not even a teenager. A couple of these in particular, especially riding things at Great America back in like 2009, which I was definitely a kid at that point. So just keep in mind that if I talk about these restraints, I talk about them when I just keep in mind that just picture me, I'm a 6'2", 220-pound man with lanky legs and long arms. So that's, you got to keep in mind. Opinions might differ depending on different sizes of the riders. So, with that out of the way, let's get on to number 5, which we have the Intamin soft shoulder straps, which you find on things like Maverick, Intimidator 305, and more recently, Stormrunner and Fahrenheit at Hershey Park. However, I have not ridden Stormrunner and Fahrenheit with these new soft strap restraints. I rode them back when they had hard over-the-shoulder restraints in 2015. So, and this is more of an obligation. I don't want this list to be all lap bars. It would definitely be all lap bars if I just went off the complete best. But I wanted to include what I think is the best over-the-shoulder restraint. And especially with my size. If you look in the bottom left, I feel like kids might have an issue with some of these smaller lap bars. Like it might lead to neck jostling, or it might lead to head banging even if you're really small. Maybe those who are taller might have shoulder pain, but I've never had an issue with these Intamin soft shoulder strap restraints. And I really want to see more coasters, especially a couple things in particular. King Dakar and iSpeed need to upgrade to these soft shoulder straps immediately, and that would make the ride tenfold better, especially iSpeed. One famous coaster YouTuber, Coaster Studios, thinks that iSpeed is literally just a bad ride because of its restraint system. It's a Maverick-style coaster, but with the hard shoulder straps. It's a very aggressive ride with terrible restraints, and they need to upgrade, or iSpeed needs to upgrade to these Intamin soft shoulder straps immediately. But I have not ridden iSpeed, so I can't say for myself. Number 4 is the GCI Millenium Flyers. And this is the one that doesn't, this video doesn't necessarily cover the trains. The trains on the Millenium Flyer trains are extremely comfortable. They have a heavily padded and they have a seat belt, as well as what I like to call a belt buckle restraint. Essentially, it's a T-bar that comes from between your legs and has a square lap bar that has a bit of a divider bar in the middle. So it kind of looks like a rectangular belt buckle. And these things make gentle contact just with the force of gravity. They don't conform to your legs much at all. They just kind of rest against the top of your thighs and lower gut. And they come down pretty nicely. They're quite accommodating to larger riders. Like it come down pretty low for kids. They'll come down high to larger riders. I can't imagine that a lot of people have problems with these. But it does not really lock very tightly. It's actually rather loose in how it locks over. So it actually encourages the airtime and laterals that one would receive on a GCI coaster. And pretty much every single GCI coaster except for Roar at Six Flags America has these GCI Millenium Flyer trains, and they're all great. I have been on several GCIs that use these. Renegade, Apocalypse, Mystic Timbers, Thunderhead. They're all great with these Millenium Flyer trains. Moving on, we have number 3, the Mack over-the-shoulder lap bar. I've only ridden one coaster with this type of restraint, which is Time Traveler at Silver Dollar City. These things really have a lot of potential. Mack has not really taken much of a stronghold for their larger coaster models in the United States. Other major examples would include Copperhead Strike at Carowinds and Manta at SeaWorld San Diego. But these lap bars are super comfortable, and they come down automatically. If I remember correctly, the operator presses a button and they come down automatically. At least in Time Traveler they do. And it's very comfortable. I found it to be very, very comfortable, but it's kind of low on the list because I've only been on one coaster with this type of restraint. Like I said, Mack has not taken a huge stronghold with their larger ride models. They're more known for their smaller ride models, like Wild Mice, General Spinners, and that's probably about it. Mack Rides hasn't had a huge surge in America quite yet. So, yeah, I think that this lap bar is very good, and I think they should keep investing in these lap bars. They also look sick as well. Number 2 is the Intamin T-bar. These things are about as simple gets. The devil's in the details, Occam's razor for those who are indicted into that thinking. These just all apply. They are much like the GCI belt buckles, but they come from their T-bars. They come from between the legs. That hence the name T-bar. They literally look like the letter T. And they only have one bar instead of two, natural curvature on the bottom for it to accommodate your thighs, as well as sometimes a grab bar, whether it be a pair or just one, to grab onto if you're not very confident in your ride. It's very simplistic and very effective designs. Some notable examples, which all are really good coasters that have this: 2 at Cedar Point, Millennium Force and Top Thrill Dragster, Superman Ride of Steel Clones at Six Flags Darien Lake and Six Flags America, and one of the best coasters on the planet, Expedition G-Force, in Holiday Park in Germany. And I'm sure there are more examples. A lot of Intamin old school hypers have these T-bars. But Intamin has kind of strayed away from these T-bars as of late, especially since Intamin hasn't really been doing much in the States since Skyrush's disaster back in 2012. We've only had one Intamin coaster open in the States since then, which was a family coaster and Wavebreaker. And now we are getting Pantheon as well. Pantheon's another Intamin. And then what I think is the best restraint, from my experience, they're widespread, they're everywhere, and they are probably the most comfortable and accommodating and exploitable restraints I've ever been in, the B&M clamshell. What else but the industry standard? These things are the ultimate restraints for accommodation, comfort, and exploitability. What I mean by exploitability is that you can easily just lean forward or slide forward in your seat and get like 2 or 3 clicks of room so that the floater airtime is magnified. And I found it to be very, very easy to do this. And you can, especially since the way the seats are formed, it's very easy to fool the ride operator if you keep the gap pretty nonchalant. And my main example is this is actually the only restraint of the ones listed that I have at my home park. And this Raging Bull just happens to be my favorite ride at my home park. So it's just a blessing to have it. I mean, it's already good enough to have a B&M Hyper at my home park, but the B&M Clamshell Restraint is just an extra cherry on top. And they do have grab bars towards the front, so you can lean forward and grab onto it. Uh, it's shaped like a clamshell, or like a sort of Gaussian spheroid. It's very heavily padded as well. They're very accommodating. It's just the ultimate restraint, and I really enjoy these. I've been on several other B&M coasters that use this as well. Diamondback, Goliath to Six Flags Over Georgia, Fury 325. I'm I'm forgetting the last one. So I think that's it. I'm just gonna leave it there. Sorry for the gap there. Yeah, B&M clamshells are the best coaster restraint I've ever been on. Now moving on to the worst. We're gonna take it to the flip side and go on with number 5 worst coaster restraint I've ever been on, the B&M Vest restraints. Now, yes, these things are accommodating or conforming. These things have the upside of eliminating all headbanging from their B&M's models, which sometimes headbanging can be an issue on some of B&M's older coasters, especially for those who can't really ride as defensively. But these restraints are just farce. They have a nasty tendency to come very tight during the ride. They just tighten as your body is pushed in further to your seat because of the positive G-forces throughout the ride. I have one of these at my home park in X-Lite, and I don't even ride X-Lite that much anymore because stacking on the brake run with the vest restraints crushing your shoulders and your lower abdomen is awful. It's not comfortable in the slightest. I think some of their newer models have solved this problem a bit. I've been on Valravin, which is not as bad. But Cedar Point Ops are also just better than Six Flags Ops. And I'm sure that maybe it's gotten even better with things like Yukon Striker. But the problem as well is that these things also take away from the forces you'd experience. Newer dive coasters like Valravin and Yukon Striker, which use these vest restraints, are inferior, or often seen as inferior, to the older models using the hard over-the-shoulder restraints, SheiKra and Griffin. Because SheiKra and Griffin have greater airtime and greater negative G-forces because of the more loose restraints. You can easily leverage some wiggle room. But these just automatically conform to your body, making the forces considerably weaker on the coasters that use these. It's a dang shame. It's a shame. And I really think that it could be better. I think they have improved since their first times using this with Wild Eagle and X-Lite back in 2012. And might have even been using it before then, but like Thunderbird is also half decent with its vest restraints. But I don't think these things will ever be as good as the originals, especially on dive coasters. Number 4 is the PTC Lap Bar. Now this is a bit of a shocker. These things are everywhere. Most wooden coasters built in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and some even in the 2000s, and some even before, use PTC trains. PTC is the industry standard for vintage wooden coasters. Sometimes even because PTC's built wooden coasters themselves. CCIs use these. 1GCI uses this. Even some gravity groups use this, particularly Voyage or just at Holiday World. And even some older coasters use PTCs. And I think that these things are excellent for people with smaller frames or especially children. But in my case, which I've already said earlier, 6'2", lanky, 220 pounds, these restraints are quite uncomfortable. And I really realized this when I went to Holiday World over the past summer, back in August of 2019, and I rode Raven, Voyage, and Legend, and I realized that these restraints were awful for the coasters I was riding. My hips couldn't really fit into the seat very comfortably. The restraint didn't come down that far. It's also an L bar, so it's on the outside of your leg. So if you have a lateral in one direction, your leg is going straight into that hard lap bar. And it just isn't good. I think that these lap bars are much better for children than adults or smaller people, but I don't think they're a great fit for me. I don't usually like these things. Uh, and I also realize that this also applies to Viper and American Eagle, my home park woodies. And both of these have PTC trains. And I don't ride either of them very much. Maybe I ride Viper once every couple visits. American Eagle even more sparse. But the PTC lap bars are not comfortable for me. The PTC trains as well. The lap bars, it's about as simple as it gets, but it's not done very well. I mean, I remember loving these lap bars, especially when I was back riding Great America stuff in 2009. Viper used to be one of my favorite coasters at the park, but ever since I've gotten bigger and Viper's the age of another decade, it's quite the opposite in reality. It's still good, but it's not exactly what I'm looking for. Moving on to number 3, we have the Arrow over-the-shoulder restraints. These things are interesting. There's nothing I try to avoid rewriting at most parks than an Arrow looper. Maybe other than just some Vekoma Boomerang or SLC, because I can do that anywhere else, basically. These things are usually rough, jerky, and have the headbangers. And it's not helped at all by their restraints. And I've already told you my frame at the beginning of the video. These restraints come down very hard on my shoulder and don't come down hard enough on my chest and abdomen. So these things are essentially holding me down on my seat by my shoulders and not holding me back into the back of the seat by the chest or abdomen like other OTSRs would, which would lead to my lower back being pulverized by the seat back and my shoulders being very much in pain. Not every Arrow is guilty of this, but most of them are. I've noticed this on things like Demon, Corkscrew, even the newer ones in Tennessee Tornado. Most Arrows are pretty much guilty of this. Or at least most Arrow loopers. They're very much guilty of this. And I really it's just a bad time. Combined with Arrow's jank transitions, combined with the headbanging, combined with just the janky ride experience, and these restraints just not holding me in correctly in the slightest, it's not a good time. And I try to avoid riding these Arrows at almost any cost. So it's unfortunate. Moving on, we have the Vekoma over-the-shoulder restraints. Now, this is basically Arrow, but European. And these restraints are typically a better fit, for my shoulders. But unlike Arrow, they typically are a lot more bulky, leading to even more gratuitous headbanging. Look at the restraint on the bottom right. That is a restraint common on Vekoma SLCs, as well as in Vertigo at Kings Island. That is awful. It is extremely bulky, and it has pads right around your ears, which leads to your head being turned into a pinball just around those two pads. Just, you look at these trains, tell me how bad they look. Stick them on an SLC or a Boomerang, tell me how bad they are. The coasters that these things are on are often terrible. And Vekoma has done well with the Renaissance, especially since a lot of their newer coasters have lap bars or vest restraints, which I've not been on, but it does not eliminate the sins of their older models. And I think that they also increased some rides have moved over to vest restraints. Great Nor'easter at Maurice Pier or Riddler Revenge at Six Flags New England. Those are some older Vekomas that have gotten new restraints. They don't help much with the jerky transitions. They do eliminate headbanging and more settle for neck jostling. And every old Vekoma, for the sake of ridership, should try and upgrade it immediately. Just the trains. You don't need to give it a whole new paint job or overhaul. As well as some of their older coasters. This also could apply to some of their loopers. I've been on Ninja at Six Flags Over Georgia when it was still Ninja, as well as Ninja at Six Flags St. Louis, and those things are awful. They're both really bad. So, yeah, it's not that great. But what is the worst coaster of all time? Or what coaster restraint of all time? What could possibly beat these Vekoma really bulky, gratuitous headbanging over-the-shoulder restraints? Well, surprise, surprise, The worst restraint I've ever been on is a lap bar. The Superman the Ride / Bizarro U-Brick Lap Bars. This is the only instance of a good coaster being completely ruined by the restraints. This coaster I went on for the first time back in 2016. And I was anticipating these things to have T-bar restraints, the number 2 best restraint, like its sister coaster that was built in the same year, Millennium Force. These two were very often compared. But when I got to the station and put down my restraints, I just realized that these things were utter abominations. Bulky, uncomfortable, and quite possibly the single worst restraint I've ever strapped myself into. They do nothing. They do nothing but keep you from flying out, which is they can easily do with a T-bar. But it also comes with the side effect of constantly inflicting egregious, heavy pain. Lots and lots of pain onto your thighs. These things are impossible to comfortably lever onto your legs. And if these things have the T-bar restraints, if Superman the Ride had T-bars, the old Intamin TBars from when it was originally Superman Ride of Steel, back in when it first opened before it got turned to Bizarro, these things would almost certainly be in my top 20. Heck, possibly even higher. It's a good ride with good airtime and a long ride experience, but the restraints are so bad I cannot look past them. It is impossible to go on this ride without coming off disappointed, angry, or pained. And this is possibly even the worst. I have some honorable mentions. Some that I've been on that didn't make the list. Some that I haven't been on, period, but I feel like would make the list. And I really want to mention them. There's just some dishonorable mentions. There's a lot more bad restraints than good. And some of them are either just one-offs, or some of them are I've yet to experience. There are a few that are also just they're not that bad, but they are definitely bad. Coast Rider's Shin Guard Lap Bars is quite awful, and I made the mistake of trying to jam myself into them for a credit, and that was awful. Coast Rider is in my bottom 10 to this day. Premier Ride's Comfort Collars is... I've not been on one, but I have heard nothing but bad things about these comfort collars. Or comfort in air quotes, because they are not comfortable. They are awkward, they're floppy, and they do nothing to keep you in the ride more than a lap bar already would. Runaway Mountain's chest-centric OTSRs. Runaway Mountain is an obscure family coaster in Six Flags Over Texas, and I've heard these restraints are genuinely strange and likely awful. RMC's lap bars. Yes, even my favorite manufacturer has awful lap bars. A bulky, skinny seatbelt combined with a shin guard and a bulky U-bar that just comes from between your legs. It keeps you in very well with the aggressive ride experience, and I've learned to love these things over time, but I can't deny it, they're still pretty bad. X2's over-the-shoulder two-piece vests. These things are just quite literally a puzzle. Skyrush's thigh crushers. I don't like them. I like them more than some people, but I can't deny that they're pretty bad still. Aero Mine Train and Aero Hyper Trains. These things, especially the lap bars for Aero Mine Trains and Aero Hypers, is not proper for the ride, and they are not padded at all. The trains in their Aero Mine Trains, I can barely fit it anymore. Oh, and I just thought of another one. The Bokoba Dutchman restraints. These things are literally trying to put together a jigsaw puzzle, and you can't get yourself out of them unless you are a very strong and ingenious man. So, yeah. There's just a lot of bad restraints out there, but there's good ones, and there's probably just a few that I'm kind of impartial to. I have not experienced every coaster yet, but I definitely want to try and experience more. These are my top 10, or top 5 best and worst coaster restraints, and yeah, I think that's about it. So, once again, guys, sorry for not uploading for quite a while. I really want to try and get this going. I know that with all the things going on in my life right now, YouTube's taking a back burner, and it probably will take a back burner for another 2 weeks until school gets out. And even then, I got other problems to worry about until this whole COVID thing blows over and the stay-at-home order is rescinded. But knowing Illinois' progressiveness and their emphasis on human life, it's probably not going to happen for a while. and I'm fearing a legitimate chance that I might not be able to get my amusement park fix at all this summer unless I do some very bold traveling decisions. Oh, and a little update as well. I didn't want to make an entire separate video about this. My trip to Great Escape and Great Adventure is canceled. We canceled it because Boston is one of the epicenters of this whole pandemic, and and the graduation for my second cousin's daughter got canceled. So it's unfortunate. But we had to do it. The hotel reservations are canceled. The trip is off. We probably need to cancel the minivan that we got as well. I don't know if that's been done already. I'm kind of sad. I was really looking forward to going Great Escape and Great Adventure, but it's fine. I kind of figured this was happening once this whole thing started getting out of control. So, on that note, if you guys enjoyed the video, feel free to like, comment, or subscription. I hope you guys have a great Easter eating time here. Stay safe, stay at home, wear protection, or PPEs or whatever. And as always,